Quazi here. In 1891, a mysterious child came into this world, and with his powerful mind, he would go on to change the world forever. His psychological manipulation of the world had a ripple effect that is felt even to this day. The interesting thing is that a very few people even know his name. He was even quoted as saying, "Our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never even heard of." His name was Edward Bernays, nephew to Sigmund Freud himself, and he was a true master of manipulating the inner desires of the masses. Known as the pioneer of propaganda and the father of public relations, he subconsciously programmed perceptions on a mass scale by using dark psychological techniques to shape public behavior. For example, when Bernays was hired by the American Tobacco Company, very few women smoked cigarettes due to social taboo. So he hired a group of young fashion models to join an Easter Sunday parade and light up cigarettes while marching together. He dubbed them Torches of Freedom and claimed that the women were lighting their torches of freedom as a symbolic act of women's equality. This manipulated the public image to make smoking seem fashionable and liberating for modern women, but in reality, it was just to boost sales. Bernays also changed the way people eat by conducting a survey of doctors that seemed to indicate that they recommended bacon and eggs for breakfast, when in reality, Bernays had simply asked doctors if people should eat a hearty breakfast. But this fabricated study of doctors' recommendations made bacon and eggs a staple morning food, which is still the case to this day. How did he achieve all of this? He used repetition to implant messages into the subconscious mind and associate products and causes with strong feelings like freedom and security. But why am I telling you this? And more importantly, how can you benefit from it? Well, what if we could reverse engineer the methods that he used to sway the behavior of millions of people and instead harness his secrets of the subconscious mind to better ourselves? A key technique that Bernays used was pairing desires and emotions together through the power of suggestion. He would connect a product or political agenda to emotional feelings of happiness, security, and social acceptance. Then he had people visualize themselves experiencing those emotions by engaging with the thing being promoted. This right here is where we can use these techniques to shift our own reality. For example, think about confident people. Confident people who are genuinely confident don't go around telling themselves that they're confident all day long. They simply know it deep down in their bones to be true. Advertisers and public figures like Bernays have long planted ideas in our subconscious minds through constant repetition and emotional messaging. Jingles, slogans, images, which then seep into the depths of our psyche. But now, armed with an understanding of how this process works, we can harness it for ourselves. I'm going to share with you how you can brainwash yourself so that you no longer get brainwashed by society. And also how you can shape both your inner and outer world with the same tools that have been used to manipulate the masses for generations. And it all lies at the heart of learning how to speak to yourself properly. Guys, I'm really excited to share this with you. Let's jump right in. The first thing that you have to understand in order to reprogram your subconscious mind is the self-reprogramming cycle. This is one of the first things that I had to fully understand for myself that allowed me to go from being that employee mindset, living paycheck to paycheck, and just being programmed by society to seek a job and thinking and believing that this was the only way for me to go, to transitioning into an entrepreneur, being responsible for my own income and actually being able to grow that to 7 figures. Once I understood this, I was able to completely reprogram myself. Now there's 3 main parts to this, 3 main levels to this. So let's get started with it. Initially, you'll notice that it begins with a thought. It begins with an outgoing thought. Some stimulus is presented to you, which we can call a thought. When someone says, now is a terrible time to make money. Now is a terrible time to start up an online business. The economy is going through a downturn. It's a recession, blah, blah, blah. Now is a terrible time to buy a house. There's inflation. The interest rates are really high. That's what the sheep say, right? And we listen to it and we start to fear it and believe it. So what is it that takes that thought, a stimulus that we're presented with, and turns it into an actual belief that we hold to be true? Here's where it gets interesting. When a thought is met, an outgoing thought is met with emotion or a feeling, if you combine it, then it becomes a belief. Let's take a moment to reflect on this. When you have an incoming thought from your environment that says, now is a terrible time to start up an online business because the economy is going through X, Y, and Z, therefore I should really hold on tightly to my money and not take any risks right now. You start to feel fearful about it. You're very, very afraid of what could happen with the economy, and you become very, very protective. This emotion of fear in conjunction with the thought of the economy collapsing becomes a belief. You actually start to believe it. Our nervous system can't tell between what's imagined and what's real. If we feel it deep down in our nervous system, we start to really accept it to be real. Both the unconscious and the subconscious mind, our whole entire being, accepts this as real. It accepts it to be reality. We become identified with it. We question all of the beliefs that we have except the ones that we hold to be true, the ones that we don't see, the ones that we operate from, the ones that are actual, real convictions. What's interesting though is that a belief can still be changed. It's not too late for a belief to be changed. As long as you can identify and be aware of beliefs or limiting beliefs that you're operating from, they have a potential to be changed. Now let's talk about what happens to the rest of this cycle when it actually becomes a hypnotic, unconscious rhythm and a way of living. Once you have this belief that the economy's in terrible condition, it's a terrible time to start up an online business, there is something in your subconscious mind called the reticular activating system, the RAS. Once it's held to be a belief, once we have emotion and thought together operating as one, your RAS gets programmed to notice more instances of where this is true, where this belief is true. So now you'll start to see instances occurring in your life where you get more bills and you get more problems, you attract more negative people who keep talking about how the economy is terrible, and it starts to fuel this paranoia. You start to notice more and more instances. You get more and more of confirmations. And once we have confirmations, the game is pretty much over. This then becomes a conviction that this economy is doomed to collapse. It fully becomes a hypnotic rhythm, like Napoleon Hill would call it. A hypnotic rhythm is something that we never question, that we can't really break out of. And unfortunately for a lot of people, because they've lived a certain way and they've lived unconsciously a certain way, they've held certain convictions to be true and they can't break free from it. There is a clear mechanism that allows us to break free from this, and in part 2 I'm going to share this with you. But for part 1 it is very, very important that you understand this self-reprogramming cycle and how it operates. To give you a concrete example of how I was able to use this to break out of that 9-to-5 employee mindset, initially I chose the thought that I wanted of me being an entrepreneur, me being a great video maker. Then I started to feel what it would be like to be an entrepreneur, to be responsible for making money, making sales, and also making videos, and these videos getting thousands and thousands of views. And then I started to consciously look for confirmation of it, which is what I will show you in this next part. Once you start to consciously look for confirmations, you change the inner conversations that you were having with yourself, the stories that you were telling yourself, how you speak to yourself dictates what reality you experience. Because who's the closest to you? Who are we the most open to? And who do we listen to the most? Someone outside, or the stories that we tell ourselves every single day? So we need to change what default story and what default conversations are happening here. How we speak to ourselves dictates what reality we experience. So this next part we have to understand is the affirmation confirmation cycle in order to break free of the hypnotic pattern. Remember before we talked about the 3 different levels through which we go through. When it begins as a thought, evolves into a belief, and finally the nail in the coffin is when it becomes a conviction. The question becomes, how can we speak to ourselves in a way that can induce a permanent change in our lives? I've been obsessed with getting a permanent change, not a temporary one. I've seen so many people, so many entrepreneurs that I've worked with who go through revenue roller coasters. One month they do so much, They do 50, 40, 80K months, and then the next month they go back down to 20, 10, 0. They almost seem to self-sabotage. And I've always noticed that this happens because they have an internal baseline. In life, we don't get what we want, we get what we're willing to tolerate. They're willing to tolerate that 10K a month. Their internal thermostat is set to 10K a month. That's why they always return back to that no matter how high they go. It really has to do with the internal conversations that you have with yourself. I want you to think about people who are genuinely confident. Do you think genuinely confident people go around telling themselves that they're confident? I'm a confident person. They don't huff and puff their chests like they're a confident person. They don't need to tell themselves they're confident. They've already accepted this as true. Remember the conviction that we never question? I just am. I don't question it. When you've become one with the thing that you want to create in your life, the thing that you want to manifest in your life, you act from that place. When I am acting from this place, there is no separation. I don't have to tell myself that I am that thing. You have to tell yourself until you become that thing. And this is how we do it. The first part, how we get started with a new program, a new way of programming ourselves, is with an affirmation. A lot of you are very, very familiar with this, but we do it differently here because I've found that doing it this way as opposed to another way makes it more effective. So whenever I tell myself something, I'm confident, or in my instance, I'm a really good video maker. Initially, when I started off making YouTube videos, I was extremely unconfident because back when I was in middle school, I used to make YouTube videos about guitar tutorials. And one day in tutorial class, like where all your classmates gather around, someone showed the teacher my YouTube videos and they pulled it up on screen, like of me doing my guitar tutorials. And I just remember being so embarrassed. I just remember that feeling of humiliation, and it kind of traumatized me. And then years later, around 10, 12 years later, I decided to start up my own YouTube channel. And I remember that trauma and it blocking me. So then I crafted these affirmations where I was like, Quazi is an amazing video maker. My video impacts thousands and thousands of people, and just telling myself all of this every single day. But when I told myself this every single day, it didn't really feel real. I didn't really feel like it was real, because why should I have to tell myself this? Why should I have to look in the mirror and try to convince myself of something? Because the more you try to convince yourself of something, the more you're actually telling yourself subconsciously that it's not real, that there is a separation between where you are currently and where you want to go. If I have to convince myself of something, it's not really true. Truth comes in realization, in seeing something for what it is, rather than trying to, disillusion yourself, right? So I began with that affirmation, but what really grounded it into reality for me, what really programmed the RAS and reversed that cycle, is when I grounded the affirmation in a confirmation. Now, I'm going to explain to you exactly what I mean by this. What an affirmation essentially does is it launches a new model of reality you want to experience, because chances are the affirmation that you're saying is drastically different from what you would like to experience. In my instance, Quazi is a good video maker. When I started off my videos, I didn't think I was really a good video maker. I didn't really believe it, because I'm just trying to get comfortable making videos. So I just told myself this, and I launched a new reality. When you launch a new reality, your RAS starts to get programmed a little bit. You start to see instances of both. Mostly your insecurities color what you're seeing, what you're filtering for. So you're going to see more and more instances in where you suck, your perfectionism kicks in, and you're like, oh, but I don't make videos like that influencer that I follow. And you start to size yourself up against others that you have seen. But what you have to understand is that's their day 100, and this is your day 1. So what's the point? What's the use in comparing? I promise you, when I started, I was in the exact same shoes that you are in right now. I remember looking at others and feeling, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. How am I going to do this? How am I going to learn how to manage this many customers and this many business assets? How am I going to learn how to do all of that? It will come with time. Remember, you're running a marathon, but a marathon is run step by step, mile by mile, meter by meter. That's how you run the marathon. You don't look at the end and you take it all in at once. So don't worry, it's going to get there, but you need to be diligent and focus your mind correctly so you can move the fastest path towards that. With an affirmation, we launch this new reality, but now it's our mission to confirm and ground this reality, to be able to have that realization, to be able to see that this is true. One way in which we do that is we become biased. Most successful people, all billionaires, people like Elon Musk, they're kind of delusional. And I remember reading autobiographies of Da Vinci, Albert Einstein, and I remember one distinct quality they all had in common. Everyone described Elon, especially his ex-wife, described Elon as, oh, Elon has his own world, we're just living in it. His sense of reality is so strong, other people get drawn into it. In life, whoever's sense of reality is the strongest, everyone else gets drawn into it. Everything else gets drawn into it. Whoever wants it less is ultimately who controls the frame. If you want to control the frame, you have to need it less, but also operate from that place of positive delusion that it has already happened, that this is your world. How you do that is by stacking confirmations on one side. So in my particular example, when I made the intention to become a good video maker, I consciously looked at only the positive comments where people were saying, oh, this video is amazing, this helped me so much, wow, I really like this, and I blocked out all the negative comments. Even though noticing one or two negative comments really made me have that insecurity again that I had back in middle school, I made a conscious decision to ignore it, to accept it and ignore it. This too has the right to exist, but I am choosing to consciously ignore it. And I'm choosing to look at all of the positive comments to ground my affirmation of, wow, I really am a good video maker. Look at all of these views, look at all of these likes, look at all of these people saying that it was valuable, that it was helpful for them. And that gave me fuel to make more videos. So it can be very, very easy in your day-to-day life to get lost with all of the negative things and the negative stimulus. When you look at the news, when you look at everything, you have to make a conscious choice to ignore them or just stop looking at them. I remember one of my mentors, he had tons of negative reviews and comments online. And I asked him, hey, how do you live with this? Like, if I had this many negative comments about me, I would probably kill myself. How do you do it? He's like, I never look at them. I literally never look at them. I don't search my name online. I do none of that. Because you never want to waste your time with that. People are going to say what they want to say. And the first sign of success is when you get hate. If you're not getting hate, you're not successful enough. From that moment, I realized it really is where I'm attributing my energy. Because there's always going to be people who don't like what you're doing. And that's a surefire sign that you're being polarizing enough that you're doing something right. And even when I make my videos, I get tons of negative comments. They always get pushed down to the bottom because I think YouTube likes to keep it positive. But I never look at them. I just look at the positive ones and doing what I can do and serving how I can serve. And I'm not going to be perfect. And I often do look at negative comments just to see which ones are genuine and could potentially help me improve if there's a clear sign. But that's a different attitude and a different mentality I have. Do you see how that's working? I'm looking at it from the place of how can I become better? How can I take this positively? How can I spin this as an advantage? Okay? So when you have an affirmation, you launch a new reality. Now it's your choice in this new reality that you're launching to only look for the things that correspond to that affirmation by confirming them. An affirmation launches a new reality, a confirmation grounds that new reality with realization. When you do it over time, you could see my channel. I went from 0 subscribers, pretty much 0 views back in 2018 to now over 500,000. And this all happened because of the inner conversations I was having with myself every single day without fail. Now, what I want to share with you is a different way to craft your affirmations, because most people craft it in a particular tense, but I do it differently, and I have done it differently. And we've helped over 1,000 clients do this for themselves, and they've also seen that this has been a lot more effective than just crafting static affirmations. What we want to do is craft dynamic affirmations. So one of the biggest problems I noticed was I was telling myself these affirmations and I didn't really believe them. We solved that with confirmations, but also I noticed that the way I was telling myself these affirmations, I didn't quite believe them, but also it just didn't feel right. It didn't resonate with me. Once I really studied physics, this started to make a lot of sense to me, and also a lot of ancient yogic teachings. And here's why. One of the most fundamental laws of life is the law of impermanence, as the Buddha would call it. But more than that, as the scientific term for it is the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy. And it basically states that the chaos in any given system, with time, it is always going to increase. The entropy of any given system is going to increase. So if I spray perfume in a room, it's going to diffuse and spread out. It's not going to come back into the bottle. It is going to take energy to bring it back into an orderly state. So life is in a constant state of chaos. It is in a constant state of becoming, unfolding, moving from one stage to the next. It's in a process of chaos. You might be asking, why is this important, Quazi? Well, as entropy increases, we can't stay static. We're always becoming someone different, okay? We're always evolving and improving. Who you were yesterday is not who you are today. Every single cell in your body is dying and rejuvenating. Who you are today is not going to be who you are tomorrow. And this character not only changes with time, it also changes with situation. Some of my friends listen to my sales calls, they're like, oh my God, you're a completely different person there. Then they listen to my videos, they're like, oh my God, you're a completely different person here. And then when they meet me in person, they're shocked because they're like, oh my God, you're a completely different person. You have to have many different sides to you. This is how the ego is. Most people think an ego is bad, but the ego is like your shadow. You need it to function in this material world. And if your ego is not moldable, you become attached to one way of being and you say, this is just how I am. This is how I've always been. You're going to keep experiencing the same reality over and over again. What we experience is a direct result of who we are, what identity we're embodying, what character we're embodying at this point in our lives. I am one way with my parents. I am one way with my wife. I am one way with my clients. I am one way when I'm making videos. I'm a different person doing all of these different things. If you look at my videos, I even spoke differently, right? So I'm evolving and improving. Maybe to some of you or someone watching, it may not be improving. But to me, I wholeheartedly believe that I am being what's necessary of me to be, based on what I want to accomplish. Our identity is always molded by the goal that we set. In psycho-cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz talks about this. He talks about the servo mechanism. When we focus our mind on a goal, everything else gets taken care of. It's kind of like performing a sport. If you're thinking about throwing darts, the only thing you're thinking about is throwing it to the target. You're not thinking about individual movements of your arm. You're simply just focusing on the target. Just like that, when you're trying to manifest a goal, focus on the target, focus on the goal, and really hold the goal top of mind. And everything else, who you need to be to achieve the goal, it will all get taken care of. You don't need to worry about that. So when I learned this lesson that I must be dynamic in my identity, it completely changed everything for me. And this is where I learned the importance of doing first-person affirmations, where you say, I am this and I am that, versus third-person affirmations. And I started to do affirmations in the third person. For example, instead of saying, I am a good video maker, I say, Quazi is an amazing video maker. And I look at Quazi as this temporary character that I'm embodying. You might be asking why. Two main reasons. Number one, life is constantly unfolding and becoming, so I will not be the same person when I craft a different affirmation. And every single belief that we hold to be true right now will eventually become a limiting belief. For example, if I say Quazi is very capable and makes 100 grand a month, what's going to happen when I want to make 200 grand a month? If I were to say I am making 100K a month, I would become really identified to being the Quazi that only makes 100K a month. It becomes a limitation. Every single belief will eventually become a limiting belief. This is why you have to be always ready to ditch the mask that you're wearing right now, to take on a new mask, or when you're ready to end it all and just become enlightened, you take off all the masks altogether. It's a game of masks, okay? I realized for me, it was a lot easier to dynamically grow at different stages in my life, different stages in my business, when I started to do third-person affirmations. I started to really see that at this point in my life, I am embodying a character. This is the character that I'm being. But beyond this character, I realize who I am. That's where we get into something very profound. The I am cannot have a definition. If I say I am this, I immediately create bondage. I immediately create attachment, and I immediately create limitation. Therefore, the I am is not constrained to anything. There is that awareness, that sense of beingness behind it all, the sense of witness behind it all. This witness is choosing consciously to embody an identity to function in this material world and do what's necessary. True freedom in life is not being able to do what you want and when you want. True freedom in life is being able to do what's necessary in any given moment in a joyful manner. I can do anything that's necessary of me. Something that I don't like, I will do it joyfully. Something that I don't enjoy, that's brutal, in terrible conditions, I'm not going to be like, I don't want to do that, I don't like it. I'm not going to be a diva about it. I just simply show up and do it happily. But the reason I can do that is because I'm beyond identity. And that's what I want to be possible for you. Once you go beyond identity, embodying an identity becomes very simple. but you need to learn how to go beyond it first, eliminating this attachment to I am this and I am that. Instead, Quazi is this at this stage in his life, and you realize that this is who I'm choosing to embody at this stage in my life. This dynamic identity allows you to become moldable. We want to become moldable and adaptable, not static. We want to become dynamic, as life is always changing, and if you don't change with it, you're going to get left behind. Now, the other thing that I noticed was super important was crafting these affirmations in a present continuous tense. Because again, life is changing. There is chaos. There is entropy. So we want to craft these affirmations in a present continuous tense. Quazi easily generates $100,000 a month. Quazi gets hundreds of thousands of views on his videos. Not Quazi got, but Quazi gets. Quazi attracts clients with ease. Do you see what's happening here? This is a present continuous tense. Everything is evolving and unfolding. It's simply spontaneously happening. Here are the 3 keys that I'm going to leave you off with that I want you to implement right now to create powerful affirmations and use confirmations for yourself. Number 1, pick 4 areas of your life and create 2 affirmations, a 4x2 method. So the 4 areas are health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality. You're going to craft 2 affirmations for each, 2 for health, 2 for wealth, 2 for relationships, and 2 for spirituality. Put it on 1 piece of paper, all of these 8 affirmations, and put it right next to your bed and read it every morning and every night before bed. Why? Because this is the most susceptible time for you to reprogram your subconscious. Because right as you wake up, as soon as you wake up, your subconscious is the most receptive. Right before you're falling asleep, your subconscious mind is the most receptive. There's a reason why Neville Goddard talks about visualizing your ideal scene, your wish fulfilled as you fall asleep. We're most likely to impress our subconscious mind, make these impressions at those 2 particular times. And I've been doing this for the last 4 years, okay? The second thing you want to do is write these affirmations in the present continuous, for obvious reasons that we just discussed. And finally, you want to write them in the 3rd person. Morning and night, you read these affirmations, you launch the new design. And what I want you to do at the end of the day, this is just for nighttime or even throughout the day, notice anything that corresponds to these affirmations. If you set a goal to become more of an attractive person and, someone of the opposite sex looks at you longer than usual and shows interest, treat that as a confirmation. Give yourself an internal confirmation that, oh, look, this is coming true. I am an attractive person. Look for evidence. Make it your mission throughout the day and at nighttime to keep some sort of a journal for confirmations. I keep a confirmation journal and I notice all of the things that have happened that correspond to who I've decided to become, who I'm trying to program myself to be. This is very, very important. I would argue this is more important than writing and saying the affirmation to yourself. Okay, so now do you remember when I mentioned that the most powerful way to become that person you want to be, program yourself correctly, is to have a clear picture, a target in your mind? The best way to do that is through visualizing, but most people don't know how to correctly visualize. I made a comprehensive video that over 700,000 people have watched right now. You can click right here to go and watch that. This is going to complement everything we've learned here very, very well. I've also made a free cheat sheet in there for you to download. It's in the pinned comments of that video. So click on the button below and go watch that video right now. Look, our mission here at realitycreator.com is to help every single human being on earth to master their destinies. Right now, I think my channel has collectively done over 25 million views. So we have 7,975,000,000 views to go to impact every single human being on earth. So I'm on a mission to do that, and it would mean a lot to me if you would share this with a friend. But I know learning visualization, one of the most powerful techniques that I use in conjunction with reading my affirmations morning and night, is going to help you do that. So go and click on the video that is pinned right here, and it will take you to that, and I'll see you in this next video right now.